Call it disbelief, maybe a glitch in our minds that keeps us from being able to envision what were once rivals in Steph and CP3, now joining forces and leaving the past in the past.
What?
But for others, we can't help but suffer from a mild case of what-if deja vu, directly related to what came about on December 8th, 2011. That infamous day, one of the craziest trades to go down in league history, failed to go down at all. With Chris Paul soon to be shrouded in the blue and gold, we as fans have somewhat held our breath in wait of the moment his feet actually physically touch down on the Golden State hardwood. But it's only natural to take a look back at his history, especially a moment that forever changed the league. I mean, over the past decade, the Knicks trade has essentially remained a hush-hush topic publicly, which has only allowed a host of conspiracies and deeply debated theories as to what actually took place to fester. Luckily for us, we live in the age of podcasters, where everyone, including a handful of NBA players, have spoken out about the intricacies of the vetoed trade and shared insight into more of the cards the league seems to hold closely to its chest.
And that's why when everyone talks about the Chris Paul Laker trade, the reason that, because I was involved behind the scenes.
To understand the chaos and emotions this trade gave way to, we have to set the scene of what the league's temperature was in 2010 to 2011. Nearly a year prior, the NBA had purchased the New Orleans Hornets due to its previous owner, George Shinn, being diagnosed with cancer and ultimately choosing to sell the franchise to recover and spend time with his loved ones. The NBA immediately took action, understanding the fan base's declining attendance and wanted to prevent yet another change of city for fear the club would continue to lose any type of traction and loyalty. So, the league purchased the team from Shinn for $300 million.
What?
And shortly after, the NBA released a statement that stated, "Franchise-altering decisions will ultimately be reviewed by the league." With that in mind, we now approach 2011, where the infamous three-way trade is brought to the table. Mind you, this directly trails a 161-day lockout that originated due to concerns and controversy over the newly implemented collective bargaining agreement. For Chris Paul, the unrest and unwillingness had won over, and he was clear on the fact that he would not re-sign with New Orleans as a free agent. He wanted out, and he wanted out now. With this understanding and desire to not lose the point guard without a solid deal in return, had the NBA scanning the market. And momentarily, it seemed as though they had struck gold. According to the ex-Hornets guard Jarrett Jack, that Thursday afternoon was like any other. Except he was currently staying with Chris Paul at his home, as he had just recently been traded to New Orleans himself and painted a picture of what that moment when the news broke on national television was like. Quote, "His wife is taping up boxes. He's kind of like packing up everything before my very eyes. Mind you, I'm looking at the TV, and it's like breaking news, Chris Paul to the Lakers," unquote. And this announcement was just the calm before the storm commenced. The trade that was to ensue issued CP3 to join forces with Kobe. The Rockets would receive Lakers forward Pau Gasol, the Hornets would get veteran forwards Lamar Odom and Louis Scola, Kevin Martin and Goran Dragic, and a 2012 first-round pick. So while we as fans gathered and speculated at what the future would look like, behind the scenes, frenzied emails, phone calls, and conversations were being had between owners and league officials. And the overarching vibe wasn't positive. The Cavs owner, Dan Gilbert, and Mavs owner, Mark Cuban, were two that loudly voiced their disfavor of the trade, concerned about the impact this kind of move would have on the league for years and years to come. For one, the Hornets would in fact make the playoffs with the additions of Odom, Scola, and Dragic, though would never have a chance to truly contend. I mean, the whole reason the CBA was implemented was to give favor to some of the smaller market teams, rather than have the same cycle of large markets dominating each season. But the true reasoning behind the infuriation with this proposed trade was the fact that it would only prop up the Lakers as title contenders for the next several years. Kobe would have been opting out of his contract, opening up $24 million and allowing the Lakers a chance at acquiring 2 more max players. LA would have a massive advantage for the following decade if the Lakers had been able to pull this off, and owners around the league, they saw right through it. So David Stern heard the complaints, saw the impact a trade of this magnitude would have on the NBA, and made the call. Chris Paul to the Lakers was officially nixed. And of course, we know the final outcome ended up impacting everyone involved in a less potent but still negative light. Chris Paul, who ended up next door to Laker Nation with the Clippers, never really moved the needle, failing to have any kind of deep run in the West with LA. New Orleans saw more decline until AD was drafted, and the Lakers missed out on what could have been the wildest trade in NBA history, putting them on a trajectory that could have made their franchise title record unbreakable. The conspiracies that have spawned from this day have been riveting. Did David Stern act to protect the investment and the ability to get the Hornets into good hands? Was it truly out of concern for the health and equity of the league? Or was it blatant bias against LA? Some even wonder if AD's lottery pick was rigged to give New Orleans a helping hand. What would the league have looked like if this trade had gone through? Would CP3 be ringless, or would we be talking about him as a top 3 point guard of all time? Would the Lakers have appealed to more stars? Could you have imagined a team decked out with Chris Paul, Kobe, and Dwight? There are so many question marks that loom over the NBA's 76 years of existence. But Chris Paul's failed trade to the Lakers will always rank near the top of the biggest what-ifs.